on the darker side during the time that things were so bad. One afternoon, Mama confronted this woman that was looking after her and Daddy was having an affair with. And she sassed my mother. She'd never been a wife nor a mother, and she was just really ugly to her. She told her what Daddy told her, I'm certain. And the woman ran out of the house, and about that time Daddy came up. And Mama was standing on the porch just outside the door, holding on to a chair. Well, Daddy came up, "What have you done?" And he started at Mama like he was going to hurt her. And she looked at him, she said, "If you come one step further, if God will give me the strength, I will bust your head open with this chair." And she called my sister to come get her.
Which one?
Chris. There was a congregation over at Chris's that night. And I was by far the most angry I have ever been. We spent the night with Chris, and I went to work the next morning. And all day long, I seethed. About 4 o'clock, I took off work, headed for that woman's house, with every intention of killing her with my bare hands. And I was strong enough to do it. And I was angry enough to do it. About a mile from her house, I believe God spoke in my heart and said, "You must not do this." By the time I got to her house, where she had small children, I said, "Send them to the yard or either in the house. I want to talk to you."
Because you had hired her, right?
And I told her everything. The words came. You talk about words neatly spoken. But I told her exactly how I felt about what she had done. I came home, fixed dinner. We sat down to the dinner table, and then it was Mom. Burl was there. Mom and Daddy, Burl and I.
Oh, so your mom went back?
Now, this is before she left.
Right, but she went back that next day. I
Yeah.
guess.
And we sat down to the table, and I started telling them where I had just come from, what had happened. And I told them everything that I had told her. And I leaned up and looked at him, and I said, "You are just as common as she is. Every word I've spoken goes for you, too." First time I ever talked ugly to him. But it was done. And I'll tell you, he didn't open his mouth, and it's good he didn't. But, that was all. I think it was probably the next day that I found an apartment. And I told Mama, I said, "Mama, I cannot stay here anymore. I want to take care of you, but I will die if I stay here."
Right, so you were still living there at that
Yeah.
time. So her needing to leave caused you to leave. I mean, you both needed to leave.
Oh,
but
yes,
nothing
I had
happened.
wanted to go for 2
But you
years.
leave your mom there.
That's right.
I see.
That's right. And when Vernon Bob came and begged her to stay, she was planning to go with me. I found the apartment for both of us.
Oh.
She was planning to go. And they begged her not to. And I said, "I can't stay. I cannot stay." I went.
Yeah.
Oh, hardest thing I've ever done. But it wasn't. But I don't believe it was 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I knew he wouldn't look after. I knew he didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
But they thought he would.
Right.
She felt so free when she got away. But at the same time, she hated him being there, sick, with no help.
Mm-hmm.
Mom always said that she hoped when her time came to die that her children would be standing around her bed singing. And all of her children were standing around her bed, and I opened my mouth to try to sing, and it would not come. But I can tell you, Mama was at Bob's, had been there 2 or 3 weeks at that time. I had been to see her on Saturday. It was during our association. I had guests at my home. Had been to see her, and she was feeling good. Oh, everything was fine. I told her I would bring some people over to see her the next day. I got a call early Sunday morning that Mama was delirious. And when I got there, it was just babbling. You couldn't understand the words she was saying. She was absolutely, she didn't recognize anything or anybody. And the doctor came and he said, we need to get her to the hospital. It's not going to help her. It'll help your children for her not to die in your home. Well, her having to move was just horrible because her arthritis was so bad. It hurt her so bad that she couldn't even lift the sheet off her body. She couldn't cover herself. For 3 or 4 years, I listened for her during the night, all night. And when I'd hear her move, I'd go in and cover her up or do whatever needed to be done. But he was insistent that she go to the hospital, and Bob agreed. And I went in and I was crying, and I told her, I said, Mom, we're going to move you. And I know it's not going to feel good, but we're going to do the very best we can. And I kept talking, Mom, do you understand that we have to move you? And all of a sudden, she opened her eyes with the clarity you wouldn't believe. And she said, honey, don't cry. I'm going home and I want to go. Everybody in the room heard it. She lapsed right back into coma. And she came out a little bit. That was on Sunday. And on Wednesday, she came out a little bit. Grandmammy came. And she came out enough to recognize Grandmammy. And she talked, she recognized Jamie. Verna was in the room with her. And I was the first person she recognized. But Verna was on the other side, and she had her back toward the door. And I came in, and Verna said, Mama, there's Barbara. And she turned around with a smile and held her hands up to greet me. Yeah. Now, you talking about $1 million smile. That was $1 million smile. But she lapsed back into unconsciousness then. And our whole family were sitting on the hospital steps, which was just out to her room, was just near the exit. And from Sunday until Thursday morning, we may have gone home to change clothes, but that was about it. We all were there. And I'll never forget Bob. Her temperature went up to 107. That's as far as the thermometer would register. And when I came out and told Bob, we were washing her down with alcohol and water. And of course, it did nothing. Bob said, can't they give her some aspirin? You know, like that was going to do it. She passed away on Thursday. The strange thing, when we moved her on Sunday, she kept saying 4. 4. And I said, Mom, are you saying 4? 4. And it was 4 days. I believe she knew. And I'll tell you, in that room at the hospital, I believe we probably were all praying the same prayer and didn't know it. Please, God, let this be the last breath. Please don't let us suffer anymore. But I'll tell you, when that last breath came, it was, oh my God, my mama's gone. It was a strange time for me. For, I guess, 24 hours or more, I had not slept nor eaten in days. I just couldn't. And after she died, I think I rejoiced as I had never rejoiced before. I celebrated Mama's death. It hurt inside. God, it hurt so bad. But I kept saying, it's all right, but Mama's dead. She is not suffering anymore. And I believe I was given to know that she was in the state of paradise. Wherever paradise is. But her trials and her tribulations and her sorrows and her pains were over. And that was a wonderful thing. I grieved awfully hard after that. I went back to work, and I was sitting at the typewriter that morning, typing, crying. And my boss came in and said, come on, go with me. Didn't ask me anything, just said, come on, go with me. We got in his car. He drove directly to the cemetery. He opened the door and said, Barbara, I'll be back in a little while. Went over to my mama's grave. Now, she was loved like you wouldn't believe. There were 125 wreaths of flowers at her funeral. And they were spread out on the grave. Some, you know, sagging, but a lot of them still very pretty. And as I sat there crying, I noticed how the ants were coming up and eating the flowers, and the bees and everything was feeding off the flowers. And a voice spoke to me and says, Barbara, life goes on. They're not even aware your mama's buried there. Life goes on, and your life goes on also. And that day for the first time, Bunny, and I don't know how long, I felt like I had a life. I was at Vernless when we got word of Daddy's suicide. And Mama's was the last of October, and this is the 1st of February. And that day, I was not shocked. It was like, whew, it's finally over. Daddy had been dead to me 2 or 3 years. And that day, and when he was buried, was the first time I really felt like I could make my life then. I had been very much in love with the man, and he had wanted to marry, and I wanted to marry him. But I told him, There was no way I could leave the family and the situation we were in. And he said, Barbara, I'll wait a year. And at the end of that year, things were worse than they were at the time he first asked me. And he said, you know, I'm ready to start a family. I want my life with you. And I said, I can't give it. I can't give it. And we broke up. And I don't have any earthly idea what my life might have been like with him. But I know that I was willing to give up that part of me to take care of Mama and Burl and Jamie. Oh, I don't think I mentioned about the television. And I don't know what year it was. Errol DePate got the first television I had ever seen. And we'd go over to his house and watch television with him. And finally, Jamie was working and I was working part-time. This is before I went to Raleigh to school. I was working at Sears. And he and I bought the first television we ever had. And of course it was black and white. It's about this big. And it was out of this world. Neighbors came to see our television. And I remember one of the